Welcome back to this special live transmission at PTV World. I'm Jawad Tehami. The latest development is as far as the situation that is developing between Pakistan and India after India's blatant aggression in violation of Pakistan's sovereignty, in the violation of the United Nations Charter, international law, and the established norms when it comes to interstate relations. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mr. Ishaq has briefed the ambassadors in the country regarding India's blatant aggression, saying it is a blatant violation of UN Charter, international law, and established interstate relations. He has also highlighted India's fictitious narrative of victimhood, and has also urged the international community to hold India accountable for its aggressive posturing and behavior and illegal and provocative actions. A befitting response was delivered when we talk about the complete coordination among all the armed forces of Pakistan, including the military, the Air Force and the Navy of Pakistan, to the Indian aggression that happened between the night of 6th of May 2025 and 7th of May 2025. The National Security Committee meeting came out with a strong worded statement, also authorizing the armed forces of Pakistan to respond to this Indian aggression appropriately in consonance with the Article 51 of the United Nations Charter at the time, place and the manner of its choosing. The National Security Committee has also urged the international community to play its role in de-escalating the situation and also holding India accountable for its aggressive measures which have put the regional peace at stake. And also it has reaffirmed Pakistan's commitment to peace and security in the region. Also, the Prime Minister also spoke at the National Assembly floor, paying glowing tributes to the valiant armed forces of Pakistan. To discuss all these developments, we are honored to be joined for this particular segment of the live transmission by Rear Admiral retired Fuad Amin Beg, Defence Analyst. Admiral Beg, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on this special live transmission. We really appreciate that and look forward to have an enlightening discussion with you as well. In the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mariam Zia, our very own anchor person, the host of Game Changer, and also an analyst. Mariam, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on this special live transmission. Admiral, when we talk about this befitting response, 5 Indian fighter jets have been downed. Quite a befitting response. If we go back in history, back in 2019, there was again very firm response when it came to Pakistan responding to that very Indian misadventure back in 2019 post Pulwama. Similar sort of pattern has developed this time around, but this time, how are you looking this response this time around? Is it more forceful as compared to the response that we delivered to them back in 2019?
Well, first of all, I will reiterate what you just said, that the actions of Indian military indicate the level of cowardice and the level of degradation that it has actually fallen down to. Targeting innocent civilians, killing innocent children and women in these dastardly attacks indicates total disregard for legality of warfare and illegal use of force. Right. Coming to your question about the level of response, Pakistan has always and will continue to provide a very potent and aggressive and befitting response to any aggression of its territorial integrity. India somehow fails to learn from history. It keeps repeating its mistakes. They did it post Pulwama and they've done it again. And every time that they cross our borders, initiate aggression, their actions have been thwarted. But this time I would say perhaps our actions met a success which is unprecedented. If you look at the success rate of aerial combats, downing 5 jets in a matter of hours is unprecedented in modern warfare. At the ranges that these were in, these attacks were conducted successfully, it sets a new precedence in aerial warfare. And it's not just the Air Force which has reacted. If you look at the border at the LOC, the Army's befitting response in terms of artillery fire, engaging the enemy posts and even the brigade headquarters is a very significant success. And let's not forget the sea as well. The naval forces are actively deployed all along the maritime boundaries. The sea lines of communications are being protected, and seaward defense of the nation is being ensured. So in all, it's a very cohesive response. I think the armed forces of Pakistan were ready, and they responded without any time lapse to the enemy aggression.
Right, a point very well made. Mariam, when we talk about this very mindset that is at play when it comes to Indian authorities giving that freedom of operation to their military, the armed forces, when their cabinet committee on security happened, then since then we had been apprising the international community and also warning India at the same time that don't do mistake, don't cross the red lines, otherwise we're prepared and we would be giving you a befitting response. But India did this mistake again, as Admiral Beg has alluded to this fact. India doesn't learn from its lessons, its past mistakes. It goes on repeating its mistakes.
Right.
When it comes to specifically targeting the civilian population, the civilian infrastructure, we've seen the loss of women and children happening. What are your sentiments as a human being when we look at this blatant, naked aggression targeting civilians and then taking pride? Look, we have destroyed the so-called, the imaginary terrorist camps, and loss of life happens.
You have touched now there, Jawad, because although I'm a journalist, but I'm a very sensitive person, and I couldn't sleep all night by witnessing those images of innocent children dying. Referring to your first question, that India's impunity, how did they gather the courage to go for civilian targets? So I would like to draw the parallels between India and Israel, because we know that of course West has been backing Israel as far as of course attacks on civilians are concerned, and since October the 7th we have been witnessing, unfortunately, a genocide happening before our own screens. Of course India was thinking that maybe they can get that kind of support from the West as well. And also it raises a lot of questions on United Nations and
I'll come to
United
that
Nations
particular
security.
aspect. So that was an expectation, a very pertinent point that you mentioned. Looking at those atrocities, when you draw the parallel as to the atrocities and the brutalities with such an impunity that have been perpetrated by Israelis against the innocent people in Gaza, so there was message that was taken mistakenly by
Israel
Indians.
Is a rogue state, and so
perhaps we
India
could also
can become
resort
a rogue
to
state as well.
some sort of an action like that.
Yeah, of
and
course.
they resorted to that one as well.
Of course, because
but they were mistaken about it.
Of course, definitely they were.
I just want your understanding regarding as to how two cases are different on this particular front when it comes to the international community's response to both the cases concerned.
Of course, when we look at the strategic location of Pakistan, that is very much different when it comes to Israel and the Middle East. Although we know that when it comes to the history, both are agendas left by Britain in 1947 and 48. But at the same time, referring to your question, that it is different because Pakistan is, alhamdulillah, a nuclear state. And that is why India would think twice for going for anything like that. So they have to think, and it has been 12 days.
So they have been thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, and they couldn't actually decipher where to actually target, and then they created those imaginary so-called terrorist camps.
But at the same time, Jawad.
But what about the international response? Did they get any sort of attraction when it came to their false, fictitious narrative of victimhood? Did they get it? Because by looking
No,
at all
but
these statements,
they did not buy it this time, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it is very unfortunate that the role of international community so far as war in Ukraine, war in Palestine, and now the Kashmir issue, which is one of the oldest agenda on of course, United Nations, is unresolved. So that is the main issue that, of course, India wanted to portray Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as a tourist state, and now they orchestrated this drama, and hence after 12 days they attacked innocent civilians in Pakistan and mentioning them otherwise. But international media and of course international players are not buying it this time.
They're not buying it
Mr.
this
Trump
time.
was the first one who responded to this aggression by India.
Yeah. We are honored to be joined. I'll come back to you, Mariam, for a number of other aspects as well. Dr. Maria Sultan, senior analyst, joining us on the phone line. Dr. Maria, thank you very much for being with us on this special live transmission. We have a number of participants here in the studio as well. Admiral Fuad Beg is of the view the kind of response Pakistan delivered to the enemy, the Indian aggression, which was, of course, in violation of international law, UN Charter, and the established norms of the interstate relations. He's of the view this particular response has been unprecedented. What's your view? How befitting this response has been? And also, I want your take when the National Security Committee has authorized duly the armed forces of Pakistan to undertake corresponding actions in this regard.
Well, thank you so much, Jawad, for giving me this time and opportunity. I think that is true. Pakistan has taken unprecedented action against India's, illegal attacks against Pakistan, and of course, Pakistan has done this in response to our right for self-defense under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. But that said, I think we need to understand two things. One, what India has done is actually an act of war. No, it is actually declaration of war, because they have not just activated these missile strikes in Kashmir or in Pakistan, or for that matter, line of control. They have gone ahead and attacked civilian population in Lahore and Bahawalpur, indicating that they violated the ceasefire. Shot down 5 of their aircrafts, taken down the brigade headquarters, taken down one Haroon UAV, and almost half a dozen other UAVs, including managed to take over 2 of their incoming drones as well. But that said, Pakistan still is considering its options, because the fact remains that we have for now shown restraint and responsibility, but we are not sure whether this message has gone loud and clear to India. Because one thing is for sure, Pakistan will respond, and Pakistan will see what is going to be an adequate response. Because for now, the war has not gone to the south. The war has not gone to central India. But they did attack central Pakistan. They did attack, south of Pakistan. So this basically means that they have declared war on 5 fronts. Pakistan is still continuing its response, and Pakistan will continue to think whether or not this is the appropriate response at which Pakistan is going to stop. So what the National Security Council has actually conceded to is given a green light to the Pakistani armed forces to take necessary action in the right step, and to take these actions in light of the threat which is emanating from New Delhi, and also with response to the challenge which we will face once confronted with any kind of Indian aggression.
Right, Dr. Maria, President Donald Trump in his reaction said this particular act, it's a shame. We've seen a statement coming from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Let me quote, China finds India's military operation early this morning regrettable, unquote. Turkey statement coming, the attack carried out last night by India runs the risk of an all-out war. We condemn this provocative initiative as well as the attacks targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure. Azerbaijan, we condemn military attacks on Pakistan which have resulted in deaths and injuries of several civilians. Deaths and injuries of civilians. What sort of law, in terms of international law or international humanitarian law, does this particular act of aggression invoke, and what should ideally be done when it comes to the major players of the world?
Well, I think it definitely can be attributed to a war crime as far as India's military actions considered, because it is always directly proportional proportionate to the threat which emanates from a person, and also with regards to the proportionality with regards to the imminent nature of that threat. We all understand that no mosque in Pakistan is an imminent threat to India, but if that is an ideological basis for India actually attacking civilian populations, it is regretful. And that is what the international community has alluded to. Because India, instead of choosing any military targets, just for political reasons, have actually chosen places of worship. And this basically means that they are on an agenda which is far and beyond than what they have it actually in Pakistan, or try to, create this effect in Pakistan by hitting, mosques and civilians, women and children, is that they are on an actual religious hatred, spree within India, where they want to disseminate mosques. They want to, go ahead and prosecute the Muslims in India on the basis of Hindutva. And that is something which, according to the UNHCR Resolution 50/1, states that if there is people who have been subject to religious hatred, then it is condemnable, and not only according to the National Human Rights Council, but also with regards to what the international, war ethics demand. But we're not expecting ethics from India. But what we were expecting is that they would have the military courage to at least engage militarily. It basically means that, what is the statement which India released after that? They said that we have deliberately tried to hit Pakistan, which should not lead to any escalatory nature. What is the understanding in their mind that if they're going to hit civilian targets in Pakistan, Pakistan is not going to look at it as an escalatory step? Pakistan has responded back, and that response has also come very strong. Unfortunately, most of these aircrafts have actually fallen down in Indian territory. So, there is this big question mark whether or not they're going to actually tell the truth to the people or not. But the reality is that the international media, the international organizations, international countries are very carefully monitoring it. And it is very clear that the Indian Air Force and Indian armed forces are in no position to actually respond back. The fact that they are under constant attack, the brigade headquarters have been targeted, both in Lipa Valley and also in other sectors, is indicative of the fact that they were not actually prepared for the counter response which Pakistan was going to generate. And like I said, that is just the start of our response. The conclusion of this response will be concluded once we believe that we have taken this message home to India that no war on Pakistan is going to be without a cost.
Right, Dr. Maria Sultan Sian is joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for taking time out. Admiral Bey, downing of 5 India fighter jets, to what extent this particular response would have an impact on the overall morale of the Indian armed forces?
Jawad, before I answer that, I just want to take the liberty to add a little to what has been said by the other two speakers. I think India is falling a victim to its own narrative. They've developed a narrative of terrorism, and they've played it for too long. While they create a hype within their own public, that hype puts a lot of political pressure on their political leadership. I think the international community is now wary of that narrative, and that narrative is facing a fatigue factor, and I think it's fading away. If you look at the responses in the last incident and this time, the 2 incidents of aggression, I think the international response is already very different. And I think Pakistan's viewpoint is being accepted, and like you mentioned the statements right now, very strong support and strong condemnation of Indian actions. So I think in terms of the narrative, I think India is losing its way, and it's becoming a victim of its own narrative.
Okay, they are losing the narrative. What concerns me the most as a citizen of this region, where there are 3 nuclear armed neighbors. So one is trying to provoke the other. The population of this region is quite huge. When we talk about this particular aggression, the diplomatic front, we've had the victory. This particular narrative is facing that fatigue, as you already mentioned. The world is finally realizing we've had those cases of India's state sponsorship of terrorism in Canada, in US, in Qatar, in the UK, in Pakistan. There's a long list. What beyond this understanding? What beyond this realization? Are we going to expect any sort of a real action, decisive action in material terms, in real terms, when it comes to international responsibility, not only realizing, but also holding an aggressor, a rogue state, a terrorist state, accountable?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. And I think this is a question that our diplomatic arm really needs to push across all international forum. But do realize that in global geopolitics, these factors have to be put in this big strategic jigsaw puzzle of so many other factors. India's position in the global order, the US interest aligned with India vis-a-vis China, and so on, so many other things. But having said that, every illegal and rogue action that India takes certainly puts a dent on their credibility as a strategic player in the global politics. So I think India is losing on that front as well, be it by part. We may not see it on the media today, but it will certainly contribute to the strategic calculations of the global powers as well, as they view India as a major nuclear power and a major actor. So it will erode the status and the stature of India as a reliable partner in their eyes as well.
In the Committee of Nations.
In the Committee of Nations.
Quite a dent on that
Yes.
particular front. What about the domestic front? This particular bogey of victimhood that we've been the victim of terrorism, when we talk about Indian perspective. Since 2014, this is the third consecutive term Bharatiya Janata Party with its leader Narendra Modi, who was banned to travel in the US because of his role in the 2002 Gujarat riots and the massacre of Muslims that happened on such a large scale. What about the domestic front? Does this narrative still sell after such a huge defeat they've had last night when Pakistan retaliated it so befittingly? What about that sentiment at home there?
I think the Hindutva narrative that BJP has so loudly propagated in India is coming back to haunt them as well. I think not only the public is wary of this false flag operation like Pahalgam and this continued effort to malign Pakistan in the terrorism narrative, they're also dividing their own population on the religious lines as well. And I think that goes to say the future of India doesn't look very bright if they continue with this Hindutva policy, and it will actually play against the Indian strategic interest in the long run. So it's the strategic thought and the leadership of India which is coming to detriment of India itself, both in international global arena like I mentioned, but also domestically like you mentioned. It's actually working against the Indian interest in itself.
Do you think this particular narrative is going to sell, or this particular whole saga since 22nd of April, that Pahalgam incident up till now, and then that very defeat on all fronts India have had on the diplomatic front when it came to the narrative, on that particular front, in terms of the defeat on kinetic front as well? There are upcoming elections in Bihar in October and November. Do you think this entire saga is going to serve to the very goals or political objectives of Bharatiya Janata Party in those upcoming elections?
So this is the real motive that I believe actually motivates Indian political leadership to go for such misadventures of colossal proportions. Petty political interest of gaining the constituencies through Pakistan bogey. But I think even this card is played to its limit, and I think this is becoming counterproductive. But before I must say a few words about your original question, which was a dent on the morale of the armed forces. I tell you, if you lose in an air raid which is offensive, if you lose as massively as Indian Air Force has done, and if you lose on the ground as massively as across the LOC Indian Army posts have done, I think it has a very serious dent on the morale of these forces. And they ask a question about the very purpose of this conflict, and since it is based on such shambles of legality, I believe this will raise serious morale concern within the Indian armed forces as well.
Right. Mariam, Hindutva ideology, the militant nationalist Hindu supremacist ideology, the flag bearer of which is the RSS, that very ideology is in the very bloodstream of Bharatiya Janata Party as well. Role of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we've seen those Gujarat riots back in 2002. He was banned to travel to the US as well. This particular ideology has put the peace, stability and security of the entire region in jeopardy, at stake. Two nuclear armed neighbors. One continues to be belligerent, continues to be provocative. The other one exercising maximum restraint. Based on this particular Hindutva ideology, there has been a smear campaign of brutal discrimination against the Muslims, not only Muslims, but also Dalits, also the Sikhs, the Christians, and Muslims within India. The kind of legislative processes that have been adopted by the Indian government in order to marginalize those minorities. And now in this act of aggression, we get that aspect that, since civilians were targeted, but when we talk about the infrastructure, the mosques were targeted as well. What is that?
Of course, when we look at this Hindutva ideology, it goes back, and now it has divided India into a country that it is no more a, one of the largest secular state of the world. So there is no dissent in India as of now. As we keep on talking about that, the media is media now. And at the same time, I would refer back to your previous...
What a shame is associated with this term, and it is one of the terms that has been coined by one of the Indian journalists.
Of course.
The Godi media, let me just
rational
explain it
voices.
for the viewers.
Yeah.
Godi means lap, and it's just like a small kid that is sitting in your lap and you're patting on their back in order to make them feel emboldened.
And whatever you say, they are going to be repeating after you. And that was what we
Am I correct,
witnessed.
Admiral?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
That's the
Jawad,
manifestation.
I would refer to your earlier question about India being the rogue state, and many humanitarian laws that India did not, that India actually violated. And of course, I would like to refer some of those laws, of course, because India did not provide any evidence of Pahalgam attack on Pakistan. And still Modi government, like Dr. Maria earlier said, that Modi government has resorted to war crimes, violating provisions of a Geneva Convention for 1949, as well as Geneva Protocol 1977, Article 51, 53, Hague Convention for 1907, Article 25 and 27, Hague Convention 1954, Rome Statute of the ICC 1998, Article 8, and customary IHL, which is codified by
I get your point.
ICRC.
There's so much provisions when
yes.
it comes to international law.
Yeah.
When there's so many provisions of international law that they actually stipulate so many of things which have been violated so with impunity by Indians. I'll come back to you for a detailed discussion on this. That makes me surprised at the very first place. Despite so many laws at the international level present, there is still violation that is happening. And in that particular context, I'll have to go for a quick short break. After this particular break, I will resume the discussion from this very important point. For that, stay tuned.